Is Glenn Jacobs. I am mayor of Knox County, Tennessee. I've had a wonderful life. I grew up on a farm in Missouri, and from there, I was able to travel the world and entertain millions of people all around the world, provide my life or my family with a life that I wouldn't have thought of possible. And the reason I found something I was good at professional wrestling, kind of a niche thing. I think that story is only possible in America because here in this country, we have the freedom to utilize our skills and our God given gifts really in any way that you choose. And the only limit on what you can achieve in this country is your imagination and the work that you want to put in. Obviously, it is not everybody's going to reach where they want to go, but in this country, you get the opportunity to do that. I always say that I'm more defined by my failures than I'm my successes. I was a failed basketball player than a failed football player. My career in football ended because of an injury, and that's kind of how I got into professional wrestling. And the reason I got into politics is because I think the American dream is something that needs to be preserved for generations going forward. It's what makes this country unique. And I was lucky enough to be able to win Knox County Mayor in 2018, and it's just been just a wonderful job. I've had the two greatest jobs that anyone could ever have as WWE Superstar and also as Mayor of Knox County, Tennessee.
And we love following your career, obviously, in both. We have a lot of kids who followed in both. We're going to jump right into some student questions. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right. I have a question from Paul. Paul is in Spain. Paul, you can unmute and ask. You had a question about his wrestling career. Paul?
Hi. My question is, when you were at the WWE, what was the most challenging move you learned?
The most challenging move to learn? The great thing about WWE is you can really customize things to fit you. So it wasn't like you had to learn moves that were really challenging. There were some things that were, because I'm a bigger guy, that were more difficult to do kind of on the receiving end. Some of the flips and those sort of things, but nevertheless, I'd hurt my knee very badly playing football. I tore my anterior cruciate ligament as well as some meniscus and cartilage in my left knee, and I wasn't able to get that fixed. And the advantage of wrestling, say, over professional football is, for me in that case, is the fact that I can control my movements. In football, you're reacting to what other people are doing. So you're not as in control as much as in the wrestling ring, where you kind of have more control because you can more take charge of what's going on in the ring, I guess. So there was some stuff that because of my size was more difficult for me, but in those cases I just wouldn't do it or didn't have to do it.
That's phenomenal. We have a question from Africa. Gabriel, you can unmute to ask because we got some great news here in America recently. So Gabriel, go ahead and unmute to ask.
Yes, well, hello, Mr. Jacobs. So, obviously, yes, recently there has been Mr. Trump's election, and I would like to kind of get a variety of viewpoints on the situation. So, what is your opinion on Donald Trump's election and why?
So what happened Tuesday was a repudiation of the hard left and progressive policies that our country's embraced over the past 4 years. I think that also the Democrats had not good candidates. And I think that a lot of Democrat voters were also really put off by how Vice President Harris was literally anointed to become the presidential candidate. From the Democrat Party, we would hear that Donald Trump was a threat to democracy, but they literally undermined the democratic process by just saying, hey, this is our candidate because we don't like President Biden. And in the end, that's what happened. You can throw whatever rationale, whatever flowery language around it, but that's what happened. And I think a lot of Democrat voters were put off by that. I mean, it literally negated 14 million votes. And then I think here in the US, people were just tired of some of the woke culture that we've seen and some of the other things that we've seen. They're tired of inflation. They're tired of the immigration crisis. So I really think that, and on President Trump's side, I think that, you know, here in America, I mean, we're always for the underdog and for the person that's being abused. And obviously, since, you know, he ran for president and won that in 2016, but even before that, I mean, you know, the media has always, I think, treated him unfairly. If you actually look at the things that he says in the context of what he says them, and then you watch what the media says about them, they're two different things. You know, obviously President Trump is President Trump, and, you know, he has this way of doing and saying things, but at the same time, you know, some of the stuff is just, I was there for one of those. Actually, I was at the White House and he was signing a bill, and that was the same day that some packages had been mailed to government officials, and they had a suspicious powder, and, you know, it was a very bad situation. Fortunately, it turned out to be not to be anything. But when President Trump gave his comments that day, the first thing he said was, "I condemn political violence." And as he's walking out of the room, reporters are peppering him with questions. Well, he didn't answer those because he's already made a statement. And on some news outlets that night, they ignored his statement and rolled the footage of him walking out of the room without saying anything and saying Trump has no comment, which was not the case. As well as the indictments, the impeachments. I think all those things ultimately, even people that may not have been big Donald Trump fans, they were tired of seeing the guy abused like that. So I think all of those things, you know, led to what happened Tuesday. And Tuesday was significant. I mean, he's going to win the Electoral College by 312 votes, which is huge. He's going to win the popular vote as well. So it really is about as close as a mandate that you can get here in the U.S.
That's great. And, you know, I know that Hamas is now calling for peace. So there's a lot of like good stuff that's already happening. That's obvious.
And Zelensky in Ukraine is also saying that. And, you know, you have to wonder, you know, the situation in Ukraine, the situation in the Middle East, would those have even occurred if Donald Trump had still been president? I mean, you know, here's the guy that was supposed to lead us into nuclear war that brought peace to the Middle East. So yeah, you're already seeing the stock market is reaching all-time highs. So it really feels, you know, I was alive when Ronald Reagan was elected president, and it really feels like it's that kind of morning in America feeling again, that we've turned the page, you know, and hopefully can move forward in a positive direction. And I think the Democrats have some soul searching to do. You know, it was just a disaster for them. And I'll tell you guys, I'm a Republican, but at the same time, you know, you also always, you want that opposition party. You know, because if you don't have that, you know, things can just run amok as well. So even if you're the party in power, you still want that opposition party. But I think that they have fallen so out of touch with the American people that led to a lot of what happened Tuesday night. So I'm hoping that there's some soul searching, and maybe, you know, they're going to come back around and reject some of these things that have driven them so far to the radical left.
I know we felt a lot of that out here on the West Coast. But I'll be remiss. We'll keep rolling with the student questions again, peppering in political and your WWE career. But Federico, you should be able to unmute to ask. You had a pretty good question, my friend.
Yes, I'm Mr. Jacobs. My question for you is, how has your wrestling career helped you in your work as major? Thank you.
Thanks. That's a great question. It's the stuff behind the scenes. In a WWE, even though it looks like it's an individual sport or competition or entertainment, it's really a team effort. Not only do you have people in the ring, but WWE, the company itself, is comprised of a couple thousand people. Everyone from travel agency who gets you to where you're going to, you know, people in licensing and marketing, back office stuff, and then you also have production people that run the TV shows and make you look good. And without all of those people, the product just doesn't work. So for me, it was just learning about collaboration. There's politics involved in WWE. There's politics in everything, and really, you know, politics is about influence and about being able to influence people. And again, even though it's a different venue, that still translates. So no matter what you're doing in life, you know, it's those skills, it's your interpersonal relationship skills, your influence with people that I believe really determines your success in life. You know, your technical acumen is important, obviously, but ultimately I think it's how you treat people that will determine how far you go in life.
Wonderful, wonderful advice. So we have Yasmin, and I see that they have their WWE belts in their room. Go ahead and unmute, guys. You had a good question.
Hi,
Hello.
Hey guys.
what is your most memorable moment in the WWE?
And also, what is your most memorable moment with the authority, especially when you beat the Shield? Thank you very much.
That's really
From Morocco.
So my most memorable moment in WWE, there's a number. I have a number of favorite matches. When I won my first world championship against Stone Cold Steve Austin, when I had my first WrestleMania match against Undertaker, also the Inferno match against Undertaker, when I went to the WWE Hall of Fame as well. And then later, after I retired, it was learning the impact that I sometimes had on people. My wife and I were at a concert a few years ago, and I ran into a woman who showed me a picture on her phone of me and her son. Her son was in a hospital bed. He had been a patient at Children's Hospital here in Knoxville, and that was the last picture she'd ever taken while her son was alive. And to think that it was taken with me, and you have the ability in WWE to pull people into this fantasy world of good versus evil and larger than life figures and all this stuff. And at least for a little bit, people can forget about the problems they're facing, sometimes tragedies like that. So you realize that that's just a gift, and that's amazing. My favorite from the authority, it was actually probably when I morphed back into Kane and had those matches against Seth Rollins. And that was that's also kind of my final run of things, right? But I thought that was pretty cool.
Certainly was. We have 2 more student questions. I'm gonna let you go. Is that all right?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Valoran is in Colombia. Valoran, go ahead and unmute to ask. I know you had a question regarding economies.
Hi, Mr. Jacobs. As a student interested in economic development and innovation, what advice would you give to us as young people who want to contribute to economic growth and transformation of their communities in the future? Thank you.
I can help with that. I know that was a lot. So she wrote, as a student interested in economic development and innovation, what advice would you give to us as young people who want to contribute to the economic growth and transformation of their communities in the future?
So I'm a subscriber of the Austrian School of Economics, which is the most free market school. I would read those works by people like Ludwig von Mises, especially Henry Hazlitt, F.A. Hayek. They're the giants of that school. And the best thing you can do is to be an entrepreneur and to be a business person. You'll often hear politicians in America say that, oh, I created jobs. No, they didn't create the jobs. Now, they may have helped nurture an environment which was conducive to job creation, but ultimately it's the private sector that creates the jobs. You look at someone like Elon Musk and just the immense impact that he's had on our world, and the fact that he buys Twitter and literally, you have all this censorship and all these things going on, and he literally changes that, and that becomes one of my #1 news sources now. I have to understand you have to filter some of it yourself, but nevertheless, I don't feel that my news is being curated. I can go get what I want to find, and I can find the truth, and I have to figure that out for myself. But nevertheless, I feel that I'm competent enough to do that. So that's what I would do is become an entrepreneur, become a business person. And those are the people that actually can really change the world. In my opinion, in many cases, it's just up to keeping the politicians out of the way so they don't mess things up.
That's a great quote right there. So we have is it okay if we do 2 more student questions? Sorry, I'd be remiss not to allow. So one of our teachers here in the States, William, go ahead and unmute to ask. You had a cool question.
How you doing, Mr. Jacobs? Kind of a crossover question. I'm actually a government teacher, also a huge WWF fan from back in the day. Saw you as in the Isaac Yankem days back in the mid-90s. Thank you for all of that. All of your work is great. I've heard the saying, if the the meaner the pro wrestler, the meaner and nastier the pro wrestler. In real life, the nicer the guy, which I know is true of you. I know you're a really great guy and you're extremely nice. Question is, do you find the same thing in politics? Has anyone ever told you you're too nice for politics?
No. In fact, I'm very principled in that, you know, what I say I'm going to do is what I do. What I believe is the right thing to do is what I'm going to do. You don't have to be mean about that. You know, you can still be and try to get along with everybody and treat people the right way while still having your opinions and still doing what you think is right. In fact, I think that's much more productive and conducive to a good outcome than otherwise. So actually being a nice person in politics, yeah, you can't let yourself get run over. So you have to be firm, but as long as you treat people respectfully, you know, and you see that throughout history. You know, think about someone like Ronald Reagan, and you know, Reagan was very principled. He believed what he believed and did it. But at the same time, even his enemies liked and respected him because he treated everybody fairly.
Yes, he certainly did, and he was crossover like President Trump, where completely different industry.
Right.
So we'll go with one more student question. This is Mesa. She's in Saudi Arabia. Mesa, you can go ahead and unmute to ask your question, friend.
Hello, I have a question. I followed the WWE a lot, and I was wondering if these were really real blows that you received, whether we bar a hand or whether take objects to hurt them badly. And also, have you ever fought against people with whom you get along well? Thank you.
What was the last part? People
You
with
want to know, is there anyone that you've ever wrestled with that you got along with outside the ring?
Yeah, so WWE is a lot like movies or TV. I mean, the action's real. Obviously, we try not to hurt each other, but you do get hit. It's like, you know, I've got hit as hard in WWE as I ever did when I was playing American football. So it is very physical, and there's a lot of risk involved with it. And you try to make it as safe as possible, but at the same time, you realize, you know, you're going to get hit. You're going to get, you know, the steel chair to the back is a real thing. Okay. And it stings and it doesn't feel great, but you know, it's part of the show. Most of the guys I got along with very well. You know, just like everything else, and there are people I really like, people, you know, I really like certain percentage of people, got along with pretty much everybody else. And there are some people I didn't like, but professionally, you have to still work with them. In fact, if you didn't like someone and you didn't want to work with them, that's when it became problematic, because, you know, ultimately it's like dancing and you have to have partners to make the dance look good. And it's the same thing in wrestling. So it was actually better when we got along outside the ring than if we fought outside the ring and had some animosity inside the ring, the matches weren't going to be really good. So ultimately it's just about being professionals and, you know, again, you know, just put it on the best show that you can for the people and the audience.
Thank you so much for touching on that. And so the final question that I ask of all of our guests, we've had over 1,200 guests over the years. So I wanted to know, is there any advice, Mayor Glenn Jacobs, that you could have for any of these kids around the world, whether they want to go into professional wrestling or they want to go into politics or something completely different? What advice would you have for them?
I would say don't be afraid to fail, and don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone. And when you step outside your comfort zone, you're bound to fail, just because when you do things for the first time and you're learning things, it's hard and no one's perfect. But if you don't do that, you'll never know what your life can be. And a lot of folks, they fail. And again, you know, I've failed many, many times in my life, but I've always been able to get back up and to keep going. But if you fail and you don't, you're stuck and you're never going to get to where you want to go. So just go out there and live life, grow as a human being, and understand that failure is part of that.
Wonderful, wonderful advice. So before I end the meeting for all, traditionally I allow everyone to unmute. Can we all say thank you to Mayor Glenn Jacobs for taking time out of his day to come talk to us? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The best.
Thank you.